Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson, and before I introduce our guest today, I do have a plug from one of our former people on the podcast, Dylan from the band The Synthwave, if you can remember him. He has a concert called Rock the Coast coming up Saturday, September 1st at 6 p.m. at Malone's Concert Venue, 604 East Dyer Road, Santa Ana, California, 92705. You can get your tickets at rockthecoast.brownpapertickets.com. It's 21 plus, by the way. And my guest here today is Matthew Slusser, with the band, formerly of the band Phantom Party. Matthew, how you doing today?
Good, man. I'm really happy to be on here. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So, why don't you give us just a little bit of your background on the music scene, how you got into music, kind of what inspires you, and what your influences are?
Yeah, man. So, I've been obsessed with music since I was a little kid. I didn't want to ever play sports. My dad always wanted me to get into sports, and I tried really hard for him, man, and it just didn't work for me. I was way more interested in his CD collection. So I just got really obsessed, and and I just wanted to be in a band forever, and I picked up drums first, and I took drum lessons for like 4 or 5 years, and so that's the only instrument that I'm actually trained at is drums. Everything else is just like me trying and putting stuff together. So I picked up bass. And I just kind of felt when I was like 14, and I fell in love with that, and that was kind of the thing that I did ever since. And jumped into Phantom Party in 2015, and that was great. And the podcast was really kind of the band was amazing, and we got to play a bunch of shows, and we traveled and we met so many people. But it's really like the podcast, I think, is the thing that I'm really. Like, it's the right move, I guess. I really fell in love with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so being a drummer, I got to say, we've had a few drummers on, and I always think that they're the undervalued position of the band. Like, no one really gives the drummers too much credit. I mean, they keep the beat. They're kind of like the backbone of the band. What would you say is the biggest misconception, being a guy who's played the drums, what would you say the biggest misconception about them is?
Oh, man, biggest misconception would be... that's a really good question. I feel like I've met a lot of drummers, and a lot of the stereotypes are unfortunately very true. But it's I don't know, man. Drummers are goofy people. I've noticed that, like, all the drummers that I've hung out with, there's something, like, they're funky. Like, they're always kind of goofballs.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I don't know about misconceptions, but I will say that every drummer that I've run into or have worked with has been just a real unique personality.
Oh yeah, I was a baseball player myself, and I was a pitcher, and pitchers are known for kind of like that thing too. So I can definitely get like that whole kind of out there personality that people have. We're a little bit funky, and drummers are too. But I mean, if you got to keep the beat, I mean, some of the drummers just have some of the most insane stamina out of anything that I've ever seen. Just how they can play and keep up the beat, and it's insane.
Yeah, I just saw. We traveled to New Mexico to see the Front Bottoms because they weren't coming to Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So my girlfriend and I and our buddy Sam, we drove up there and we saw them in Albuquerque, and their drummer Matt is just like, he hits those drums as hard as he possibly can for fucking like 2.5 hours. It's crazy. He never loses stamina, never slows down. He's high sticking like crazy, just like, it's nuts, dude. And he never missed a beat, never dropped anything. He was perfect.
Yeah, that's just totally unbelievable. So then you went on to bass, and bass, again, another thing that's very underappreciated in the bands. I've talked to a lot of bass players. What made you want to try the bass as opposed to maybe doing like a lead guitar or just vocals, or what made you think about doing the bass?
My dad always instilled this very, very important respect for bass players ever since I was a kid. I remember listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he told me about Flea, and then we listened to Iron Maiden, and he would always say, "Listen to Steve Harris's bass lines. Listen to these bass lines. They're so great, man. Listen to the galloping rhythms and stuff like that." And my dad just, he was always really quick to point out the bass. He's not a guitar player by any stretch of the imagination, but he was kind of a drummer too when he was a teenager, just kind of like for fun. And he always had an appreciation for bass, so I was always listening to it more than ever. Green Day was another one. Like, we listened to Green Day, and he would always mention the bass lines. So I don't know. I guess it was always kind of looming in the back of my head, and I've always been kind of a contrarian too. I always wanted to do what other kids didn't want to do, I guess. Yeah. So everyone wanted to be a lead guitar player, and I was like, whatever, I'm going to be different. And it's a really simple kind of idea, but I think it was a mixture of those two things. It was a mixture of I just grew up with an appreciation for it, and I wanted to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. The bass player that I really first listened to, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's like actually really good, was Chris Novoselic, Nirvana.
Yeah.
Some of his, he was really good at that. So I was like, oh my god, yeah, bass players. Because before, like, I didn't really start music until I was like Guitar Hero age came out, and then I started like doing like the bass or like Rock Band. I started playing bass, and I was like, oh, this is super easy. But then I didn't realize in real life that no, it's not that easy. So, but yeah, definitely bass players do get they get very underappreciated just because I think that they're not the ones usually singing. They're not the ones usually that are like on the center of the album covers. So it's always the lead singer, the lead guitar player. But I mean, the backbones of the band, they get underappreciated, but they are really, I mean, without them, you wouldn't have a band, you wouldn't have music, so.
Chris Novoselic is probably one of the most underappreciated bass players, I think. He really doesn't get, like, he gets the credit as far as, wow, he's the bass player for Nirvana, but all of his stuff isn't extremely intricate, but it's very, very powerful, and it has a potency to it that resonates even to this day. Really, no one talks about him as much as they should as a bass player.
Oh, absolutely. I just think we could talk a little bit about that, but like I just think with like Nirvana, just when you have a lead singer like Kurt Cobain, who I mean he even admitted he was a singer first, a guitar player second, but then you have like Dave Grohl on drums. It's kind of hard. It's kind of easy to get overshadowed by those two because they're just both legends of rock. So I mean, I think he kind of got the small end of the stick on that one, but
he's a farmer now. He has like a farm somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's up still in like the Seattle. I think he ran for like Congress for one thing, but then I was like, geez, yeah, could you imagine Chris Novoselic as your congressman for someplace? Yeah, but I know he ran for it. But yeah, I mean, Nirvana was definitely my band that kind of like got me into like the whole alternative music and just not just listening to the pop songs all the time that you hear on the radio and just totally. they were huge. But why don't we talk a little bit about so you had Phantom Party. What was could you remember the first performance you guys ever did live and what that was like?
Totally, yeah. We played a house show, and I want to say it was like it was April or May. I wish I had the exact date, like May 7th maybe. I can't remember the exact date, but we played at a house show in Tempe in some like ridiculous house, and we didn't even have mic stands. Like they didn't provide us with mic stands. They had two mics, and we hung the mics from the ceiling fan, just to be able to sing into them. And halfway through the set, someone who lived there like found mic stands, and he immediately was like not cool with that. So he put them on mic stands. We were in drag actually. Our first show, we went to Goodwill and we got a bunch of like awful old women's clothes, and that's how we did it. The drummer didn't go with us, so he just kind of put something together. He just had like a really long, short dress, but because he's tall, it just looked like a tank top. And he had Hawaiian lays around his neck, and he had tube socks almost to his knees. So it was like, and then there's pictures too where he's playing, you can see the crotch shot and his underwear's out and stuff, and it was fun, man. That was a really, really, we were blessed with a good first show. There was a really good amount of people there.
So, like, being your first concert, like the nerves and everything, do you think that going in drag kind of helped with the nerves, where you're kind of like, oh, this is silly, like it's not going to be like so much about like the attention is going to not so much be on us, and kind of like, oh, these guys are in drag, or do you think that might have added a little bit of like nerves to you, or was it more just about just having fun and just dressing up?
It was more about having fun and dressing up. We had all played in bands prior to that, and we had all kind of played shows. Josh and Austin were in a band called the Semester Review for like 4 years. They had played 100+ shows, I'm sure. And I had played some shows too in the past as a drummer in Ohio when I lived in Ohio before I moved out to Arizona. And so we had experience for sure. So it was just more of a like, because the reason we did it was called the Stark Disco, and it was a theme party. It was like a glitter theme party. So we were like, all right, well, like we're just kind of like gruff, ugly dudes. Like we don't really have a whole lot of pizzazz to us. We couldn't like pull off glitter or makeup or whatever like that. So we were like, all right, well, let's just own it and be as ridiculous as possible. So that's what we did.
That's awesome. So, we kind of talk about this a little bit later, but since we're already on the topic, what is it kind of like for people who don't perform, for people that don't entertain in crowds? What's it like performing live? Just kind of like that high that musicians always talk about that they get like from the energy of the crowd, from just knowing that like you're providing them with entertainment and they're just kind of, getting excited about it. What does that feel like to you personally?
It's a blast, man. Like it feels so good that it's worth, like, when you set up a show, especially if you're headlining a show, you're showing up to a venue fucking 4 hours early. You're waiting around. You're sound checking. It's boring as hell. You're doing that. That's why so many musicians get on drugs. It's like it's not because they're geniuses and they're trying to push their genius to the edge. That's definitely part of it. But the other part of it's waiting, man. Like, it sucks. So, especially when you're on tour. So, like, it's worth it. It's worth it though. Like, you'll play a 30 minute set to an hour, and it's worth it. It's just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's very, very, very. I mean, it depends on the person, but like, I love it. Like, I love attention. Like, that's why I have a fucking YouTube channel and a podcast and a band. Like, so we all do, man.
Touche on that, man.
Yeah, for sure. So we both, and the whole band was like that, and it was just fun. We would always go as hard as we possibly could, and we'd throw our instruments around and roll around on the floor, and we had a really good time. We were a really energetic live band, and the reason we were like that was because it just felt good. It was just like a roller coaster ride. So it's wonderful. Anybody who wants to be in a band or wants to experience playing live, like, I would definitely say do it. Especially your first few shows usually are not going to be good, and you're going to be playing to like a couple confused friends and maybe some ashamed family members. But aside from that, it's worth it.
What would you say also to someone who's like thinking about forming a rock band or any musical group? What would you say is one thing that they got to like look out for that they might not think about before they form the group?
Business.
Yeah.
Business, totally. No one thinks about business, and it is extremely important. You have to be able, marketing, networking, make sure that you're putting in the work, and you're not just like if you just want to be a hobbyist and you want to hang out with your buds and like crack some brews and jam, whatever, that's totally cool. But if you actually want to be in a band, you need to prepare to work your ass off and not get paid what you're worth for a little while. Mm-hmm. And especially rock music today is definitely on the decline, and hip hop is by far taking over. And the reason that it's so popular isn't because it's superior musically, but because they know how to market. They're not putting out an album every 2 years. They're putting out singles and mixtapes and remixes, and they're constantly giving you input, and bands need to do that. They absolutely have to do that. The album format is amazing, and I believe wholeheartedly in the album format, and I listen to albums, not songs, but that's not where the industry is right now. So to anybody who is talented, who's starting a band, I would tell them, like, obviously write good songs, obviously like work on being a good band member and stuff like that, but you need to think about it as far as like, it's not just playing music. You have to, especially in today's day and age, dude, like, you need to be able to do it as DIY as possible, because everyone wants to take your money and do work for you, but none of it's really going to be as good as what you could do on your own. So it's marketing, networking, and just kind of being as business savvy as you possibly can, and try to put out something original. Everyone, like Phantom Party was guilty of that. We were putting out like 60s throwback music. No one's interested in that right now. It's already been done. Rock music is not doing very well right now because it's not giving us anything new. It's just taking old ideas from the past and mixing them with slightly newer ideas from the past. Whereas hip hop and rap music's not doing that at all. Like trap just blew up over the last few years. It's a completely new thing. Rock needs to do that. They need to figure out a way to come up with some new stuff and hustle like the hip hop guys are.
Yeah. So this is an interesting topic because I haven't talked about this to anyone. I've had mainly metal bands on my podcast, so we haven't really talked about the decline of rock, but I've always been interested as to why. I kind of, the Foo Fighters to me are kind of like the last true, like, kind of like rock band that was like commercially successful, was like super, super popular, but we kind of went over the reasons a little bit. But what do you think were like any other reasons that rock kind of died? And, people always say that like after the death of Kurt Cobain, that was kind of like the end of like the rock star kind of thing, where there wasn't any like more like super commercial successful ones, but I mean obviously you had Green Day and others, but what do you think personally led down to the downfall of rock, whereas to like no one really listens to current rock music anymore?
The radio plays a really big role in that, because the radio is still just like, I don't know about what it's like where you are, but in Arizona and definitely in other places that I've lived, you turn on alternative rock radio and it's playing fucking Bush from 1994.
Yeah, same here.
It's all the same shit. We've already heard it. It's nothing new. But you go to a pop station, you go to a hip hop station, you're hearing all the new stuff. Mm-hmm. Rock radio is just kind of like treading water right now. Yep. And I don't listen to the radio, and none of my friends really do. We all listen to we all have Spotify Premium or whatever. But that's not the majority. That's just me and my dork friends. Like, the majority of people are still listening to the radio, and like they're not hearing anything new, so they're switching off. But the radio stations are afraid to put on new music because they don't want to lose the listeners that they have. Because the demographic right now for rock radio is like 25 to like 40. It's somewhere in that range is their demographic. And like it works for some of them, I guess, but the kids aren't listening anymore. The kids used to listen to it. When I was a kid, I listened to alt rock radio like crazy, but it's just not anymore. It doesn't cater to them anymore. So that's a big part of it, man. But like I said, like lack of originality is another one. Rock is becoming more and more niche. It's becoming more and more like, you can be a successful rock band if you are catering to a niche or a cult audience who wants to hear your kind of music. That's most of the music I listen to. They're somewhat successful musicians who they'll pack out a venue, but no one really knows who they are outside of that group of people. So they need to find a way to cater to the larger audience while also having something new and original to say. And I think that's going to happen eventually. I want that to happen eventually. But where we are right now, man, it's kind of an odd stalemate. So
yeah. So kind of just going back on to like your inspirations for becoming a musician. Is there a song in particular or a band in particular that you remember as a kid that when you first listened to them you were like, holy crap, I need to become a musician. Like this is what I want to do in life. Was there a moment that you remember?
So there's two pieces to that answer. The first one is the first time that I remember getting truly turned on by music was listening to Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden was like the shit. I loved them so much. That was the big number one. Like I would look at their ridiculous outfits and I would pretend to play drums on stuff. This is like like 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I was always interested in music. My dad had a drum set. I'd play around on it for fun. I was okay for like an 11-year-old who was just like playing around for fun. And then in 7th grade, there was this talent show, and this kid, Doug McIntosh, played the talent show, and everyone thought he was amazing. And I thought he sucked. And everyone, like, because all he did was like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, like beat really easy beats, and then he would do like a sloppy fast drum fill, and then that would be it. He would just do that, and he would always cover a song. Mm-hmm. So he got so much attention for that, and he got so many people saying that he's amazing. And I was like, no, he's not that good. Like I barely even play, and I'm better than him. Yeah. So that I spent that entire calendar year from 7th grade to 8th grade, or 6th grade to 7th. Yeah, 7th grade to 8th grade. I spent that whole year working my ass off playing drums. And then the next talent show came around, and I showed up. He did the same thing, except he had light up sticks. And he wowed everybody. Luckily, he went on before me. Yeah. So he was doing his thing, and everyone's like, oh my God, he's amazing. He's done it again. And then I show up, and I do a completely impromptu freestyle drum solo with my own drum set. And I fucking slaughtered him. And then, like, no one was talking to him after that, and, like, everyone loved me, and I was like, oh, this is great. So my true obsession with playing music came out of spite. Like
I was just about to say that, yeah.
it just came out of like, fuck this kid, he's not as good as everyone thinks he is.
Hey, that's one of the best motivators out there, though. People don't say that, but it is if you honestly think about it. And also talking about, a little bit about Iron Maiden. I mean, "Run to the Hills" and "Number of the Beast" are two of my favorite songs of any band. I mean, just the pace that they play at was unbelievable. Just the fast pace, and it's, yeah. But for me, I've mentioned this already like 100 times, so I'm just going to quick. Metallica Master of Puppets was my thing that really got me into it. That was, I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I've had like 5 podcasts where I've went on and on about it, so, yeah. I don't want the audience to be like, yeah, we've heard this shit about 7 times, so yeah.
Yeah.
But, so, you also, released an album with Phantom Party. Could you kind of describe what that was like? First of all, who wrote the music in the band? So
Josh, the singer guitar player, would write out the song. He would have the structure. He'd have the lyrics and the guitar parts and all that kind of stuff. And then Austin, he would make all the demos at home with a drum machine. Then he would send us the demos, and then we would work on them at practice. And Austin and I would bring our own flair. We would write our own parts over the kind of foundation that he built. And that's how we did it for everything that we ever did together. And so the album it's called 100 Skeletons. We did it all by ourselves. We went out and we bought like a interface. Austin, our drummer, bought it himself because ours crapped out the day we started recording.
Oh, wow.
And he bought like a $600 Scarlett 18i20, and it was awesome. And so we spent a week recording it in Josh's house. And like he had like this really cool front room area. We have a music video called Tunnel of Love. And we shot that video in the exact same place where we recorded the entire album that it's on. Not on purpose. That's just like the space that we had.
Yeah.
But so yeah, if anyone's interested, that music video like takes place in this weird little concaved room, and that was all that we recorded every single instrument in that exact same spot. So we recorded it all there ourselves. It didn't get mastered properly, so like I have a lot of problems with that album just because. When we went in to record it, all those songs were like a year and a half old, and we were just putting them out because we were ready to move on. So we were kind of playing them because we did the best we could, and it sounds good, but we weren't like as excited about it as we were the following EP we put after that, which is called A Year in Bed, which only was released like 6 months after. And that one you can hear a lot more vitality and excitement in. But yeah, 100 Skeletons was cool. People really liked it. We sold a bunch of them, and we toured a little bit with it, or went out of town. I guess it wasn't really a tour, but yeah, man, we had a good time with 100 Skeletons, and making it was stressful, but pretty fun. So yeah, it was a good time, learning experience for sure.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about traveling to play, and we've talked to bands before about like touring and kind of like the big misconception that everyone has that it's just like one huge party and you get like all these great road stories, which you obviously sometimes do. But what people don't mainly realize is that bands, until you become like really famous or really make it, you usually lose money on tours because you're paying for everything yourself. You're trying to just get more fans and just get out there. Could you kind of go through what your experience was with traveling to play music and just what that was like for you?
Of the 5 times that we left Phoenix to play shows, we only came back with money once.
Wow.
Which was the last time. And second to last time. So, yeah, man, that's like, but that was a lot of that was our fault. We didn't ask, like, this is like band basics. This is stuff people need to know. You have to ask for guarantees. You're hooking up a tour, even if you're just going like across state lines to one other place to play. Like us, like we're in Arizona, so we would go to LA all the time. And when you go out to play a date somewhere else, you need to ask for a guarantee. That's really important if you want to make money. If you just want to play anywhere and you want to have a good time and you're just basically on vacation with guitars, totally doesn't matter. But if you're looking to do it legit, ask for guarantees, make sure you're going to get a percentage, make sure the other bands who are on the bill will actually bring people to because like you're not going to bring anybody. Like if you're a band in a position where you're worried about like making money on tour and you're pretty new, you're not going to like bring anybody on your own other than some friends that might have moved out there or whatever.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you're booking baller ass bands to open for you that are going to bring in money. That way you can get either a door split, percentage of the bar sales, whatever. There is way to make money, but you have to be smart and you have to be tenacious and you have to ask questions. Don't be afraid to talk to the promoter. Be like, hey, we want this, and that. Like, don't be divas. You don't need a fucking green room, but you at least ask for a guarantee, even if it's just a little bit of money. So that's the thing when it comes to touring, man. Like it all comes back to the work ethic that people don't realize it takes in order to be in a band that's going to go somewhere.
Absolutely. So here's where we get to the juicy part of the podcast. This is the questions. I kind of do like an Inside the Actor studio where I ask the people questions and they kind of give answers. So here we go. What is one song out of all the songs that have ever been written in the history of music that you wish you would have came up with yourself?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Goddamn, I have a lot of those. I'm going to say, though, for the purpose of time, so I don't just go, for 10 minutes. I'm probably going to say, there's this guy, Amigo the Devil. He's like one of my favorite musicians ever. And he's like I'm pretty into folk music, and it's like he calls it murder folk. It's like true crime folk music. It's real dark and kind of brooding, but also really fun. He has a song called "The Liars Club" that I like. It taught me how to sing. Like learning that song, because I was never really that much of a singer. But a few years ago, I sat down with a guitar and I learned it. And that song like taught me, like I learned so much about singing just from like sweating out that song all the time. So say Amigo the Devil, The Liars Club. It's a really obscure cut, but that's one that's coming to mind for sure.
Yeah. And any artist, dead or alive, doesn't matter between the two, that you could play one song with, who would it be and why?
Dead or alive, I would probably have to say Frank Turner. Frank Turner is like one of my favorite musicians on the planet of the earth. Just saw him a couple weeks ago. He kills it every single time I go out and see him live. I'd love to play with Frank Turner. I love that. I have tattoos with his lyrics on my body.
Nice.
So I would probably say, yeah, for sure, Frank.
And then last question out of this, and then we'll get on to your YouTube channel, because we'd like to talk about that, because we haven't had someone on with that. But out of all the venues on the planet to play at, which one would you want to play at and why?
So many amazing venues.
I know.
All right, I'm going to say, so this is a reasonable one. There's a venue in Phoenix called the Van Buren, and I go there and I see shows all the time. It's like what is the capacity? It's like 1,500-ish people, somewhere around there. It's where it's where the bands play who aren't playing the 3,000 and up rooms, which are usually the bands that I'm the most in love with. So I've seen like Front Bottoms, Frank Turner. I've seen so many amazing bands there, and I'm absolutely in love with that venue. So. And that's reasonable because it's in town. So I would probably say the Van Buren, because those guys run a great ship over there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so now this is going into uncharted territory for the podcast. We've mainly just had people talk about music and their interests and just stuff related to the music industry. But now we have someone else on here who is also a fellow YouTuber, and then we're gonna plug the crap out of your YouTube channel. And why don't you just tell us a little bit how you got started doing podcasts?
Yeah, totally. That leads right into it. So the podcast thing started just because I love podcasts. I listen to like the ones that there's so many amazing podcasts out there that I have to push some amazing ones away because I want to be able to listen to the ones that I'm already listening to, because they're so fucking long. It's not like a music. Where
I know Joe Rogan's is like 3.5 hours, so it's like you can only listen to like those clips that he posts on it usually.
That's like my Sunday chore day. Like, you know, I'm doing laundry. I'm going to put Rogan on and listen to the whole fucking thing over like a 2-day period. I don't listen to every episode he posts, but I listen to all of the ones that interest me, and he posts enough that I listen to a bunch. Yesterday I listened to the one with Joey Diaz.
I listen to everything Joey Diaz is on. I don't care. That guy's one of the funniest human beings alive.
That's the other podcast I listen to a bunch, The Church of What's Happening Now.
Yeah.
My whole show is based on the Rogan experience.
Yeah.
It's just like sitting down with your friends and bullshitting and stuff and getting real deep every once in a while. So
that's the goal here. As soon as I get big enough, or as soon as then I can just be like, okay, we can just rent a studio someplace like 4 times a week, and then just get my friends here and then just bullshit the whole time.
Do it in your fucking house. You don't need to go rent out a studio.
Yeah, I know, but it's one of those things where I just gotta know that like people would be into it before I put a significant amount of money into like getting other stuff. So. It's
totally.
Things, yeah.
I'll for sure. So yeah, those two and Smodcast, Kevin Smith's show, and all of the podcasts that break off from Kevin Smith's Smodcast. He has like 5 or 6 of them. I do my best to listen to those as much as possible. So that's what I listen to a lot, and I've tried to start podcasts in the past, but it never worked because I never had the right co-host, or that I never had the right idea. And then being in the band, like a light bulb went off, and I was like, shit, I know all these people who I can talk to now. I'm in this like music scene. I know all these people. So it started off as that, and then, you know, you do enough of them and your name gets a little slightly bigger to where you can get slightly bigger guests, and it just kind of rolls like that. Now the YouTube channel, I just wanted to do more. Mm-hmm. The podcast is an extremely limited audience. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to work more. I wanted to do more. So I started doing album reviews because I love the needle drop. Anthony Fantano is like one of my favorite guys on the internet, and I wanted to start doing album reviews in the same kind of laid back and honest, but yet very excitable and passionate style that I have at Getting Stoked. So I was like, all right, well, let's bring that into album reviews. So I started doing album reviews, and I stopped doing that recently just because of a time thing. The job that I had up until Monday, I have a new job on Monday. Oh, wow. But I worked a job for 3 years that just like it was a lot of hours. It's waking up early. I didn't have enough time to be able to commit to the constant vlogging and video making. Mm-hmm. So I put that on hold. That's about to change. But yeah, and then I do this thing called the Good Dog Sessions, which is like raw acoustic sessions with some of the bands who've come on the show. Yeah. And it's called the Good Dog Sessions because my dog is in every video, and everyone who comes over loves my dog. Yeah. So that's kind of how that rolled out. And it was basically just a way to keep moving traffic to the name and keep moving traffic to the podcast. Because at the end of the day, the videos are awesome, but I love the podcast.
Yeah. What would you say is, like, we kind of just talked about biggest misconceptions for, like, playing instruments. What would you say is the biggest misconception people have about podcasts? Because obviously some people just probably think, oh, it's just easy. You just, like, hit record and then you just talk. But there are a lot of things that actually go into it that most people don't know about. Could you talk about kind of what your misconception might have been like going into it, and then you're like, oh, this isn't as easy as I thought it would be?
Yeah, that misconception I learned a long time ago, which was, like, number one, biggest misconception is that your friends are not as funny on a mic as they are in your garage when you're smoking pot. Like, it's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. You have to be the right personality to make it work. So which is why Getting Stoked works the way that it does, is I have like people on and I do my best to kind of break them out of their shell within the first 10, 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then from there it's just wild. Yeah. So, but like doing it with one person can be hard unless it's the right person. On my show, I've met, let's say, so I've released 53 episodes so far. I've recorded probably about 56 or 57, somewhere around 60. And of the 60-ish episodes that I've done, I've met 5 guests who I could actually do a podcast with every week.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, yeah.
It's hard, man. It's hard to find those right people. And, you know, if time permitting, I'll definitely do a side podcast with one of those guests for sure. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. So yeah, man, it's hard. Like it's everyone freezes up when they get on the mic, or they don't really know how to convey their thoughts as natural as they actually occur to them. Yeah. And when you're just hanging off the mic. So that's a big thing, man. You got to find the right person, and you have to be the right host to kind of pull them out of their shell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was sweating balls when I had my first podcast because I was like, oh my God, this is like, what am I going to do? But then I just think it's just like anything else. Like once you practice enough, or once you kind of just like take your reps or whatever, it does get easier over time. And then it gets to a point where you're not, it's just like normally like just talking to someone, just like how we're talking right now. And then
the advice that I would have given you had I known you before you started the podcast would be start with friends first who are doing what, like, okay, for instance, the first podcast that I did for Getting Stoked was with the singer of Phantom Party. Mm. So like it was perfect. Like it was a really good way to kind of get things rolling and get things moving along, and I already knew him in a story, and we could kind of go from there. Mm. So like my advice, I guess, to budding podcasters would be start with people who you're pretty sure you can have a pretty cool conversation with. Start with the direction. Like start with, like, you don't necessarily need to have pages and pages of questions, but you definitely need to have at least in the beginning, you need to have a rubric and a foundation in which to follow. And then from there, you can kind of gain what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you can fix, and what you can change. I still do that. I still make mental notes in every single podcast that I have. Every single one that I've done, I make a mental note to not say this that way or not to do that, or so it's you're constantly learning, and that's what I like. Whenever I stop learning shit, I get bored and I move on. That's what happened with drums. I took drum lessons for years, and I was able to play drums to every song that I liked at the time, all the rock songs, all the pop songs, all the whatever. I could play the drums to all that stuff, so I got bored and I moved on. So the thing about podcasting is it's such a human thing. Like when you do it the style that we like, which is the conversational style, it's very human. And anything that is inherently human is also, in my experience, an extremely long, continual learning process. So if you're constantly dealing with humans and you're constantly doing something that is human-based, you're constantly going to grow and constantly going to learn. And that's why I feel like I'm not going to burn out of the podcast thing, because there's just so many different ways to go.
Oh yeah, and you meet so many interesting people. Like the people that I've met so far doing my podcast, in real life, had I not done a podcast, I probably would have never met them. And then you just get such different insights on the different type of people and just how they think and why they do the things that they do. And it just really helps you understand kind of like human beings more. And it gives you a little bit more sympathy for all types of different ways that people do stuff. I mean, it's really broadened my horizons at least now. And I mean, it's great with the amount of people that you meet. You can also maybe like just make new friends. And like I have people that have invited me to their concerts and everything to like go and check them out. And I just think it's a great way to just get to know people better too. And people don't realize that, I mean, once you start talking to other people, I mean, they don't usually seem as bad as you might think they would on just first glance. I mean, you don't judge a book by its cover, and that's something that I think as podcasters, we definitely have come to learn, don't you think?
Absolutely. Dude, the amount of people that I've met who I've befriended from this show, I would probably say that I've become more than just acquaintances with every single person who's come on the show. I've befriended pretty much, I can't think of anybody who has ever left negatively. Every single person, like there's been guests who I've had on, we did our thing, we shook hands, walked away, and like that was a cool thing. We might not hang out on the weekends, but through doing this podcast, my circle of friends is fucking huge, and it's huge with like people who I looked up to, people who I think are doing great stuff. Like there are so many podcasts of mine where when you listen to it, you're basically just like listening to people become best friends. Like that happened with the guest Wiley Tilson. That happened with this band Takeover and Destroy who came on. The two of them came on. There's a bunch of examples of that where like we had not met before the podcast, and then we end up doing a 2.5-hour episode, and then afterwards get drinks, and we just become good friends. So like it happens, man, and it's also stupid. Like I'll have moments where I'm like, well, I cannot believe you're in my house. This is stupid. Like, what the fuck? This is so ridiculous. Like, we're hanging out in my master bedroom in my fucking apartment, and we're just like talking. It's so weird, man. But it's really humbling. It's really cool.
How do you think the whole podcast thing got started? Like, I've always kind of wondered that myself, because it just seemed kind of like it took over a little bit overnight. I mean, we were talking before about Joe Rogan. That was the guy who really got me into listening to podcasts. I didn't really know what they were before that. But where do you think it started? Do you think that it was just random people just talking in their basement and they said, hey, let's record this? Or was it something where, like, people got an idea, like, monetarily wise? Yeah, because I'm not really familiar with the origins. Do you happen to know anything about that?
Yeah, definitely. The origins of podcasting all kind of stem back to talk radio. Because it's talk radio, but it's uncensored because it's on the internet. And so it's kind of, that's where there were kind of little drops and drips throughout like the mid 2000s of little things.
Or like Howard Stern before that.
What's that?
Or like Howard Stern before that.
Exactly. Yeah. Howard Stern is a great example. Yeah. So Howard Stern, Adam Carolla, there were guys who were doing it. One of the people who are kind of the godfathers of podcasting that nobody talks about because no one really remembers it or were listening when it was happening, but was Ricky Gervais. The Ricky Gervais show was on for like 3 or 4 years, and with him, Stephen Merchant, and Carl Pilkington, and like they did like hundreds of episodes, and that was one of the first podcasts ever. Smodcast came around in like 2007, and that was a really huge game changer as well. That's what turned me on to podcasts. But yeah, it's basically just like the Wild Wild West, man. It's like radio shows with ads that you choose, and you can put them in whenever you want. A lot of them don't have ads at all. I have the ads that I do, I always put at the very beginning of the episode, just like Rogan. I don't fuck around. I don't cut it in the middle. I don't break up the natural conversation with ads. I just I record them after the episode is over and plug them into the beginning. And then, so that's the way to do it, man. And yeah, podcasts, they've come a long way for sure. And it's kind of become this whole other medium now. And it's cool. I love it. I love talking to people.
Yeah. And what would, well, also now we can kind of plug like your new job that you got. Well, I checked on Facebook before this podcast and you had got a job with another YouTube channel. Could you, would you be willing to talk a little bit about that and kind of like what your new duties are? Because I think it would be cool for people to kind of get a little bit of heads up so they can definitely check you out.
Totally. Two things. One, that's not my new job. That's just another new thing that I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
I just have a new job. It's just an office job.
Oh, that's nice.
But it makes a lot more money than I was making before, and my hours are a lot better, so I'm going to be able to have more time to invest in this. So now Caliber TV is the YouTube channel that I just partnered with, and they've got like 19 million accumulative views, and they've got 60,000 plus subscribers. And they basically kind of made their mark doing live videos, concert videography and things like that. And they would follow Warped Tour. They got hired, I think, last year to follow Warped Tour and shoot for them and stuff. They're from California. They're from Sacramento. And I'm friends with like ridiculous amount of people on Facebook, none of whom I know, just networking and stuff.
Yeah, same here.
And someone posted a thing on Facebook like, looking for someone for a content creator YouTube channel or something like that, and I plugged the channel, and then they checked it over. In a few weeks, we kind of started sharing emails back and forth, or Facebook messages back and forth, and then one thing led to another, and we had a meeting and locked it in. And I'm gonna be kind of they don't have like a person that does interviews. They don't have a face of the show. They just have like, they're all behind the camera geeks. Like, they're amazing dudes, but they don't necessarily need to be in front of the camera. I'm insecure enough to need to be in front of the camera. So they're kind of making me the face of the show, I guess. I'm going to do interviews and vlogs and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. That's definitely like that's the game changer. That's the next level.
Absolutely. I mean, it just proves. And how much you think, like, we can this about like music too, as also podcasting. Like, the theme that we kind of have throughout the podcast here is just about kind of like perseverance and just to keep on keeping on even when the times are tough, and just having that attitude that, you know, that things will get better, because everyone always starts out, unless you're like super super rich already, everyone starts out at rock bottom when they try something new. What would you say is the number one thing that you took from starting out kind of like at rock bottom, and like the positive attitude that you had to carry forward in order to get that to where you are right now?
Enjoy what you're doing. Like, you just have to enjoy it. Like, if you enjoy what you're doing and the benefit that you reap from all of the hard work is further enjoyment, then it shouldn't be hard. It's just going to be like, yeah, there's definitely challenges like saving up for better gear and learning how to do the gear. But if you enjoy doing it, then like, if you enjoy doing it, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So that's how it was for me. And also about like, just keep on keeping on. I had a guest on whose episode is coming out pretty soon, and Psycho Steve is his name. He's a huge promoter here in Phoenix, and he told me persistence beats resistance. And I love that. And that's exactly true with anything in the art sphere of things. Like, persistence beats resistance. You have to work hard, and the harder you work, and the more you keep going, and the more you push forward, the better results you're going to get. Like, people don't realize, like, most bands before they break were around for like 8 fucking years. Like, it takes time, whether you're in a band or you're a podcaster or you're a filmmaker or a writer. It takes time. Some people will just like get lucky from the jump, but those people generally don't have the longevity of the people who worked hard, because they don't have the work experience to do it, which is the biggest downfall to the hip hop generation that we have right now. Like, rock musicians know how to work. They know, like, bands who are putting out albums, they know how to hustle, they know how to work. They will stay, they'll stay a while. hip hop guys will put up something on SoundCloud, get like 3 million fucking listens in a week, go on tour, and not be able to do anything live at all. Mm-hmm. So there's, you know, we have to find kind of this in between with the genres, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we go here, just for the last time, would you tell everyone here your YouTube channel, the new channel that you'll be working for, and maybe where they can find some of the music of Phantom Party if they want to give a listen to, just so that the audience knows where they can go and look for that stuff?
Totally. So Getting Stoked is the name of the whole thing that I do. The podcast is on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Stitcher, it's anywhere you can find podcasts. Getting Stoked and all of its episodes are there. They're also on YouTube. I just have the audio and with like a picture or whatever on YouTube of almost all of them. That one takes a little longer because I have to edit them and whatever, put them on YouTube. But most of those are on YouTube as well. The YouTube channel is Getting Stoked. So all that stuff is there. Phantom Party is also on iTunes and Spotify and anywhere you can stream music, all the major streaming platforms. Bandcamp, it's all. I think all of our stuff's on Bandcamp for free. So yeah. All that stuff, all my stuff is pretty accessible. And then Caliber TV is the name of the YouTube channel that I partnered with, who within the coming weeks or months or so, I'll be producing some content for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll definitely leave a link below for all those things. I mean, it was great having you on. It was great talking to you about not only just music, but about podcasting. I mean, being a fellow podcaster who's just been starting out, I've only been on for about 2 weeks, and this is like, I think, episode number 9. But it's
Sweet.
just, it was really great talking to you, and it was great, you know, just shooting the shit like we usually do. And if you ever need like anything for me to talk about like if you have like any new videos coming out, I'll definitely share with anyone. So just give us a shout out, or if you need like anyone to ever like talk to again, I mean, you're more than welcome to come on this podcast again. It was great talking to you. So in the future, you need anything, just let us know. And man, it was great talking to you, and I guess we'll see you soon, man.
Perfect, man. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.